The night it shifted, I was plating arroz con pollo while the scent of saffron and garlic hung heavy over the stove, the kind of smell that usually pulls a family to the table without a word. Sophia didn't look up from her phone when she said it. Not even a flinch, just a practiced line dropped into the steam between us. "You're not really my mom." My hand stilled around the wooden spoon, and the kitchen clock answered for me with a bright, unbothered tick. She lifted her eyes, then sharp, excited, certain, and told me how Camila understood her brand, how college was old news, how a different version of family would be better for her future. I could feel something sensible in me, splitting like a seam you've reinforced a dozen times and still hear pop. I set the spoon down as carefully as if the wrong angle might shatter me. "Okay," I said, because sometimes the softest word carries the sharpest edge. The steam kept rising. The clock kept time. "Before I go on, tell me where you're listening from tonight. And if you've ever had to choose boundaries over being liked, leave me a comment and a little heart. If this kind of true family story keeps you company, tap like and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next." My name is Elena, and for 9 years, it was just me and my girl. Victor left when Sophia was 8, shrugging off the weight of fatherhood, the way some men shrug off a coat that pinches across the shoulders with a smile and a promise to call that never came. I picked up overtime in steel-toed boots and reflective vests, reviewing shop drawings at midnight so tuition bills wouldn't bounce at dawn. My mother taught me that love shows up in groceries paid on time and light bills that never flicker. And I clung to that plain wisdom, even on weeks when the car needed brakes and the washing machine coughed like a coal miner. We weren't rich, but I learned the geometry of sacrifice, the angle where a second job lines up with an honor roll ceremony, the point where pride meets a payment plan. Westfield Academy cost more than any number felt reasonable to say out loud, but I paid it because I wanted Sophia to walk hallways that promised possibility. When she turned 16, I bought a used white Lexus we could barely justify and watched her sit taller behind that wheel, shoulders loose, chin lifted like belonging had a shape you could drive. Tutor summer programs, the laptop she swore would make her unstoppable if she asked for it, and it touched her future. I found a way. When Victor slid back into the picture, it was with a high-gloss smile and Camila on his arm, all curated feeds and confident advice about building a platform. He brought weekend promises and soft-focused dreams, and for a girl who'd grown up with a practical mother, that glitter looked like air after a long swim. I told myself a 17-year-old deserved to know her father, even if he'd been a shadow for years. I told myself a young woman can hold two truths in her hands without dropping either security in one palm, excitement in the other. At first, it was harmless. New phrases slipped into casual conversation, a sudden interest in ring lights, a shrug when I asked how calculus had gone. Then came the eye rolls about old-fashioned college and the snide comments about my job, as if managing crews and schedules and safety logs couldn't possibly be a career. Camila called herself a coach, but what she coached was attention, the way someone might teach a child to clap on command. Sophia began spending weekends at their townhouse, returning with designer candles and a mouthful of other people's certainty. The night she told me I wasn't really her mother, I watched her face for a long time. I saw the baby I'd held through nights of fever, the little girl who squeezed my hand at her first recital, and the teenager who wanted badly to believe somewhere else was easier. I thought about receipts with my name on them and casseroles delivered to dance class in foil pans. I thought about steel beams and poured concrete and the quiet pride of a woman who never missed a bill. Somewhere between that memory and the smell of garlic cooling in the air, I understood that love without respect eats you alive. So I set the spoon down and told her, "Okay," as steady as a level line across a blueprint. If words could redraw a family, then mine could redraw my boundaries. She waited for the storm she thought I'd be, shoulders tight, thumbs hovering over the screen for impact. I blew out the burner and let the room go quiet. In that quiet, a different kind of plan began to take shape, clean and simple as a checklist in a hard hat. And when the phone on the counter lit up with a Westfield email banner, I realized I already knew where to start. Camila's entrance into Sophia's life was like glitter shaken over a clean floor, at first pretty in the light, and then impossible to sweep away. She arrived with glossy hair, a polished smile, and promises that looked so much easier than the hours I spent in a hard hat and steel-toed boots. Sophia's eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years, the kind of light that comes from being told exactly what you want to hear. Camila called herself a lifestyle coach, though no one seemed to know what that meant beyond selfies with inspirational captions. What mattered to Sophia was that this woman said she saw her, that she understood her dreams, and that college was an outdated burden dragging her down. Weekends at Victor's townhouse soon became the highlight of my daughter's calendar. I would watch her pack with a spark in her eye, tossing clothes into a duffel bag while humming under her breath. When she came back, she smelled faintly of Camila's perfume, a blend too heavy for a 17-year-old, and she carried new words on her tongue brand platform followers. I told myself it was harmless, a passing phase, maybe even healthy for her to know her father again. I had always believed a girl needs both parents, even if one had failed her before. But as her laughter turned sharper, her patience thinner, I began to sense the ground shifting under my feet. It came to a head one Sunday evening when I set dinner on the table, the meal warm and steady, the way home is supposed to feel. The kitchen filled with the rich scent of garlic and saffron. But Sophia didn't even glance up from her phone. She spoke as if commenting on the weather, her voice light and rehearsed. "You're not really my mom," she said, lifting her eyes to mine only at the end. Her face carried a defiance that wasn't hers. It was borrowed, practiced in another mirror. She told me Camila understood her better, that Camila supported her dream of being an influencer, that she planned to move in with them when she turned 18. My hand tightened around the spoon until I thought it might snap. I saw the fevered nights the first day of school nerves the way she once whispered, I was her favorite person, all of it colliding with this cold dismissal. I placed the spoon down carefully, the way you lower something fragile, and answered with a single word. "Okay." Her expression faltered, expecting a storm and finding silence instead. She pressed on, trying to fill the gap, her voice cracking just slightly. But I stayed calm, and I asked her the only question that mattered. If I wasn't her mother, then who carried the obligations? Who paid tuition, car insurance, college funds? I watched the color drain from her cheeks as she realized what she'd invited. I turned away before she could see the sharp edge of my heartbreak. The scrape of her chair against the floor was loud in the silence, followed by the slam of her bedroom door. I stood in the kitchen staring at the backsplash, my chest heavy with more than grief. It wasn't only pain, it was resolve. 9 years of sacrifice had been dismissed in a single breath, and I knew I couldn't continue the same way. That night, I sat at the table long after the food grew cold, spreading bills across the surface like playing cards in a game I no longer wanted to win. I thought about Westfield's tuition, the Lexus, the college fund. For once, the numbers didn't make me panic. They made me steady. Because if I wasn't her mother, then I wasn't bound to keep paying for a child who no longer believed she was mine. By Monday morning, the decision had hardened. I brewed coffee black and strong, then dialed the school bursar's office with a voice that didn't waver. I informed them that financial support for Sophia would end immediately effective that day. The woman on the other end hesitated, startled, but I confirmed it twice. When I hung up, a calmness settled over me. It felt like the first domino falling, the start of a chain that couldn't be reversed. By noon, the Lexus was listed online, its white paint gleaming in the photographs I posted. I set a fair price, and within hours offers began arriving. That afternoon, Sophia stormed through the front door, eyes red and uniform wrinkled from a day gone wrong. She dropped her backpack with a heavy thud and shouted, "Mom, what the hell?" I stirred beans on the stove, letting the silence stretch before turning to her. She explained that the principal had pulled her aside, that everyone knew I'd stopped paying tuition, that she was humiliated. Her voice cracked with outrage and disbelief. But I met her eyes evenly. "Talk to your real mother figure about it." I said the words landing harder than any raised voice could. Tears welled in her eyes. "Don't say that." But I only reminded her she had said it first. She accused me of ruining her life over a single comment, but I shook my head. It wasn't just a comment, it was a declaration. And declarations have weight. She collapsed into a chair, burying her face in her hands, calling me insane. I didn't argue. I let the silence teach what words never could. That evening, as I washed dishes, my phone buzzed endlessly. Victor's name filled the screen 47 times in an hour, each message angrier than the last. He accused me of abuse, threatened legal action, promised that Camila's cousin would sue on Sophia's behalf. He said I had traumatized our daughter. I scrolled through his words with a strange detachment, replying only once, "She has a real mother figure now. Ask Camila to cover it." His response was instant, calling me pathetic. But I blocked him before another word came through. The next evening, Sophia tried a different tactic. She cooked dinner, a burnt lasagna, and oversalted salad, presenting them with a shaky smile. I thanked her, but didn't let the effort erase her words. Later, she vacuumed the living room, folded laundry, even sat on the edge of my bed, twisting her fingers. "I didn't mean it," she whispered. "You've always been my mom." Her eyes pleaded for me to undo what had already been done. I asked if her sudden clarity had anything to do with tuition and the car being sold. She denied it, but her gaze wavered. I told her I wouldn't be manipulated, not by guilt, not by sudden affection, not by theatrics. She begged, but I sent her to bed. The slam of her door echoed down the hallway, but I stayed firm. By Wednesday, Victor and Camila arrived at my workplace, creating a scene in the lobby until security escorted them out. Camila's voice carried above the noise, accusing me of jealousy, claiming Sophia loved her more. My boss stood beside me on the mezzanine, watching with a raised brow. He patted my shoulder and said only, "Stand your ground." That evening, Sophia tried again, eyes glossy with desperation. "I'll never say anything like that again," she promised. But I asked her what would happen the next time Camila offered handbags or Victor whispered promises. She couldn't answer. I told her to leave my sight. That night, I sat alone in the living room, chest aching, throat tight. Every instinct urged me to gather her in my arms, to smooth her hair, to fix what was broken. But I didn't, because this time she had to learn that words carry weight and choices shape consequences. And as the week pressed forward, I knew we were only at the beginning. The real test, the breaking point, was still to come. Thursday arrived with a heaviness I could feel before the sun even rose. The deadline from Westfield hung over our house like a storm cloud, pressing into every corner. Sophia woke early, pacing the kitchen in her wrinkled uniform, her cereal untouched as she clutched her phone like a lifeline. Each vibration made her flinch. Messages from her father, from Camila, from friends already whispering about the possibility of her transfer. She tried to speak casually, but her voice carried the weight of dread. "They'll fix it," she muttered, more to herself than to me. I poured my coffee and let the silence stretch between us. She didn't yet understand that I meant every decision I had made. By noon the following day, judgment arrived at my doorstep. The doorbell rang, and when I opened it, Victor stood with his arms crossed, jaw set in stone. Beside him was Camila, hiding behind oversized sunglasses despite the gray sky. Behind them stood an older woman I didn't recognize at first. Her hair pulled into a silver bun, her posture upright with the kind of stiffness that commands a room. Camila introduced her with deliberate sweetness. "This is my mother, Rosa," she said, as though presenting royalty. Without waiting for an invitation, the three of them stepped past me into my living room, their perfume and cologne drowning out the faint aroma of coffee that lingered in the air. Rosa wasted no time. She fixed her sharp eyes on me and began with the authority of someone used to being heard. "In our family, we don't abandon children over words," she declared. "My daughter is guiding Sophia toward adulthood, and you are standing in her way." Victor added quickly, "Elena, come on. She's 17. She made a mistake. Don't throw away her future over this." My voice was calm, almost cold, as I replied, 17 is old enough to know the meaning of words. Old enough to say, I'm not her mother. If she's old enough for that, she's old enough for consequences." Camila pulled off her sunglasses, then her eyes blazing. "You're jealous. She loves me. I encourage her dreams instead of smothering her with your outdated rules. That's why she respects me more." I couldn't stop the bitter laugh that slipped out. Respect doesn't pay tuition. Respect doesn't put gas in her car. Respect doesn't open doors to a future. If you believe respect is enough, then where is your checkbook? Where is your name on her school account? The room fell silent except for the ticking wall clock. Camila opened her mouth, but no sound came. That silence told me more than words ever could. I pointed toward the door. "Get out!" Rosa gasped, calling me heartless, her voice rising as she followed Camila's retreat. Victor lingered just long enough to shake his head at me, disappointment painted across his face, before slamming the door on his way out. When I turned, Sophia was standing in the hallway, her face pale, her expression stricken. "Mom," she whispered, but I walked past her without answering. My chest burned with grief, but I couldn't let her see me bend. That night, the explosion came in a form I didn't expect. Sophia posted a long message on Instagram under a carefully staged black and white selfie. She accused me of being toxic, of abandoning her, of destroying her future. She tagged Victor, Camila, and even some of my co-workers, turning my private discipline into a public trial. By morning, the post had spread far beyond her circle. Thousands of strangers weighed in. Some defended her. Others mocked the entitlement. "Bank of Mom is closed," one wrote. "Actions have consequences." Yet mixed in were cruel attacks on me, calling me unfit, heartless, abusive. My phone buzzed endlessly with messages from friends, family, even coworkers who had stumbled across the spectacle. My brother Carlos texted, "Want me to respond?" I answered simply, "No. Let her speak. The world will answer for me." And it did. By Sunday, Westfield processed her withdrawal, and the transfer papers to Jefferson High were signed. When I told Sophia, her face crumpled with fury. "You're sending me to Juvenile Hall High?" she shouted, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Do you know what Westfield kids call that place? Futures go there to die?" I folded my arms, unmoved. "Sounds like a personal problem." Her fists clenched at her sides, trembling. "I'll never get into Columbia now. You've ruined everything." My reply was calm. "Talk to Camila. Maybe she knows someone in admissions." She screamed, "Stop saying that. You're my mother." I met her eyes, steady and unflinching. "No, I'm just a woman you're biologically related to." "Your words, Sophia, not mine." Her mouth opened, but no sound came. She dropped to the floor, sobbing, her shoulders shaking. The sound tore at me, but I stayed still. Pain teaches what comfort cannot, and she was beginning to learn. Monday morning, she pulled on the Jefferson High uniform with the look of someone walking into prison. Her voice was bitter as she muttered, "Do you know what Westfield kids call it?" I sipped my coffee. Enlighten me. She spat the nickname again, Juvenile Hall High, before storming out the door. That evening, I found a note slid under my bedroom door, her handwriting shaky and uneven. In it, she admitted she had been swayed by Victor and Camila, that she believed their lies because she wanted to, that she knew now they couldn't give her what I had. She begged me to be her mother again, ending with the words, "my real mom." I read it 3 times, my chest tight, but I didn't respond. Not yet. Words on paper were easy. Truth was harder. 2 days later, I received a call from Keith, an old friend who practiced law. His laughter filled the line before he even greeted me. "Elena, you'll appreciate this. Victor filed an emergency petition claiming you're financially abusing Sophia by pulling her out of private school." I nearly choked on my tea. Financially abusing her, Keith explained that the judge had dismissed the case immediately. "Private school isn't a necessity for a 17-year-old, he said. Case closed. I laughed until my stomach hurt, the first genuine release I'd felt in weeks. Victor hadn't given up, but the court had seen through his nonsense, and that small victory gave me strength to keep going. But by Thursday, the storm returned to my doorstep. Victor stood there again, this time looking smaller somehow. His energy deflated. Camila trailed behind him, her makeup unable to hide the dark circles under her eyes. She crossed her arms tightly over her chest, her lips pressed thin. Victor tried reason this time. "Elena, you've made your point. Sophia's miserable. You've humiliated her. Are you proud of yourself?" My voice was steady. "I'm not proud. I'm resolved." Camila snapped, then her tone shrill. "Do you know what you've done to me? Sophia was supposed to be part of my image proof that I could balance family and success. Now she's in public school and people are mocking me." I raised an eyebrow. "So this was never about Sophia. It was about your brand." Her face twisted ugly beneath the layers of foundation. She shouted, "You ruined everything!" Before I could answer, a knock came at the door behind them. 2 men in suits stood on my porch, their presence formal, their voices firm. "Are you Camila Alvarez?" one asked. Her eyes darted between them, panic flashing across her face. "Yes, why, we have a warrant. You're under investigation for fraudulent business practices, specifically selling counterfeit beauty products under the guise of pharmaceutical-grade skincare." The blood drained from her face as the officers read her rights. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains as she was handcuffed and led down my front steps. Victor stood frozen, his jaw slack, his hands useless at his sides. I leaned against the doorway, arms folded, watching the scene unfold with a calm I hadn't felt in weeks. Victor spun back toward me, rage twisting his features. "This is your fault. You drove her to this. If you had just paid Sophia's tuition, none of this would have happened." I barked out a short laugh, sharp and humorless. "So Camila committed fraud because I stopped paying for private school. That's Olympic-level mental gymnastics, Victor. Maybe try for a medal." He sputtered, searching for words, but nothing came. Sophia appeared in the hallway behind me, her face pale, her eyes wide. She had seen it all, the cuffs, the lies, the collapse of the fantasy she clung to. I didn't speak to her. Not yet. Some lessons require silence. That night, she knocked softly on my bedroom door. Her voice was small, the bravado gone. "Mom, I don't want to stay at Dad's anymore. Please, I don't feel safe there." I let her words hang in the air, listening to the tremor in her voice. For the first time in weeks, I saw fear that was real, not teenage dramatics. My daughter stood on the edge of understanding. I didn't open the door, but I answered quietly, "Then prove you mean it." Because forgiveness wasn't free, And this time, she would have to earn it. The days after Camila's arrest settled into a silence that felt different from before. It wasn't the sharp silence of slammed doors or icy stares. It was fragile, almost tentative, like the pause between breaths when you're waiting to see if something will break. Sophia moved quietly through the house, keeping her steps light, as if the walls themselves were listening. She stopped slamming her bedroom door and instead closed it carefully. She came straight home after school, changed out of her Jefferson High uniform without complaint, and even stood at the counter helping me chop onions for dinner. Tears running down her cheeks from the sting, and maybe from something deeper. I kept my distance watching her from across the room. It was too soon to forgive, too soon to forget the words that had gutted me. Still, I noticed the small shifts. She stayed up late over her homework, her notebook spread across the kitchen table, not scrolling through her phone, but actually working through the problems herself. One evening, I asked quietly if she needed help. She startled, looked up with wide eyes, then shook her head quickly. "No, I'll figure it out," she said, her voice carrying determination I hadn't heard in years. That weekend, she came into the living room clutching her notebook like it was a shield. She sat across from me, twisting her fingers together, her face pale and her voice trembling. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything. For what I said. For choosing Dad and Camila. For humiliating you online. I was stupid." Tears slipped down her face as she tried to hold my gaze. "You've always been my mom. You're the only one who's actually been there. I treated you like trash, and I don't know why you even let me come home." For the first time since the nightmare began, I reached across the space between us and took her hand. My voice was steady, but firm. "Because you're my daughter. No matter what you say, no matter how deep the wound, I will always be your mother. But love, without respect, I cannot give that." She nodded through her sobs, whispering, "I'll earn it back. I promise." Her words were fragile, but for the first time, I heard a thread of sincerity running through them. While Sophia was beginning to shift, Victor's life was unraveling in parallel with Camila's. She faced charges for selling counterfeit skincare products that had sent a customer to the hospital. He no longer walked with the easy confidence he once carried. Without her glittering illusion, he seemed smaller, older, worn down by the cracks in his choices. One night, Rosa showed up at my door with Victor trailing behind her, looking like a scolded child. Rosa's sharp voice cut through the evening air. "You've destroyed 2 families," she accused. "My daughter is in jail. My grandson humiliated. You should be ashamed." I didn't move from where I stood. "Your daughter destroyed herself with lies and fraud," I said evenly. "Don't put that on me." Victor stepped forward, desperation heavy in his tone. "Please, Elena, think about Sophia. She needs stability. She deserves her car back at least." I let out a humorless laugh. "No, Victor. She deserves lessons. She'll get a car when she graduates with a GPA above 3.5. Until then, she walks or takes the bus like every other kid who isn't bankrolled by parents playing savior." Rosa's face flushed crimson, her hands tightening around her handbag. "You are cruel." I met her glare. "No, I am consistent. There's a difference." They left in a huff, but the truth lingered in the quiet of my house. Their empire of image and pretense had collapsed, and there was nothing they could do to rebuild it. As for Sophia, I began to see her soften in ways that surprised me. Jefferson High, the school she once sneered at, became less of a punishment and more of an awakening. She made a friend named Maya, a sharp and grounded girl in her AP calculus class. One evening, Sophia admitted sheepishly over dinner, Maya told me I was entitled, that I deserved everything that happened. She looked embarrassed, her fork pushing at her food. I raised an eyebrow. And what did you say? She gave a small, nervous laugh. I told her thank you. Can you believe it? For the first time in months? I smiled faintly. Maybe she's good for you. Her cheeks flushed as she whispered, She is. She's real. Not like the Westfield kids. Months passed, and the house began to feel like a home again. Slowly, carefully, we rebuilt what had been broken. Sophia studied harder, kept her room clean without being asked, and even picked up a part-time job at a cafe down the street. One evening, she came to me, her face serious, her voice steady. Mom, can I still use my college fund, even if I don't go to Columbia? Maybe community college, then transfer? I nearly dropped my fork in surprise. You're considering community college? She nodded. Maya's doing it. She says it's smart financially. I don't want to waste what you saved. Emotion swelled in my chest so fierce it nearly broke me. I met her eyes steady. That money has always been for your education. But this summer, you're working. You'll pay for your gas, your insurance, your own extras. Do you understand? She smiled through watery eyes. Deal, Mom. It was the first time in months she called me that without hesitation. The last confrontation came one Saturday morning when Rosa Victor and a haggard-looking Camila, now out on bail, appeared on my porch. They claimed they wanted peace, that they wanted family unity. I stood in the doorway, robe tied at my waist, coffee in hand, unmoved. Rosa began with her usual sermon. Elena, this has gone on long enough. Families forgive. Families unite. I cut her off. Families also show up. They sacrifice. They tell the truth. None of you did that for Sophia. Don't lecture me about family. Camila's voice was hoarse, her glamour stripped away. Please, she begged. I know I made mistakes, but Sophia shouldn't suffer because of us. I turned slightly, looking at my daughter standing just behind me. Her back was straight, her chin lifted. She didn't shrink this time. My voice was calm, final. She won't. Because she's learning, and she'll keep learning, but not from you. I closed the door in their faces, leaving their pleas outside in the morning air. That evening, Sophia cooked scrambled eggs and bacon for dinner. It was overcooked but edible, and she placed it on the table with a shy glance. Mom, are we good? She asked softly. I took a slow breath, then answered. We're getting there, step by step. She smiled, small but hopeful. Later, after she had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table staring at her college fund statement. The numbers glowed on the screen, $127,000 every dollar scraped together through sacrifice and overtime. I could spend it on myself, or I could keep it safe for the day Sophia truly earned it. I closed the laptop and poured myself a glass of wine. I hadn't won anything. I had simply stopped losing. And in that quiet, fragile peace, I realized sometimes the hardest part of being a parent isn't the sacrifices, it's knowing when to stop making them. And though my house was calmer now, I knew the next chapter of our lives was only just beginning. The fragile peace in our home felt like glass balanced on a shelf, steady only as long as no one reached out to touch it. Sophia moved carefully, doing her schoolwork without complaint and keeping her voice even, but I could still sense the weight of guilt hanging over her. Jefferson High had humbled her, though she didn't admit it out loud. Instead, I saw it in the way she clung to her new friend Maya. or how she volunteered to wash dishes without being asked. Slowly, she was learning the value of quiet effort, but part of me still wondered if it would last once the sting of humiliation faded. One evening in early spring, she sat at the table with her notebook spread wide and asked if I'd check over an essay draft. I skimmed the pages and found her words surprisingly thoughtful, full of effort I hadn't seen in years. "You did this without anyone helping?" I asked, setting the papers down. She nodded quickly, her cheeks coloring. "I wanted to prove I can." That small confession tugged at me, though I kept my response measured. "Then keep proving it," I said, and her smile told me she understood more than I said aloud. Step by step, she was trying to earn back what she had carelessly thrown away. But Victor was never far from our lives, and his desperation kept bleeding through the cracks. He began calling at odd hours, leaving voicemails full of pleading and anger, sometimes both in the same breath. One Saturday morning, I found him waiting by my car in the driveway, his face haggard, his shoulders slumped. "Elena, please," he said as I approached. "Sophia needs her old life back. You've punished her enough. Just let her return to Westfield. Give her the Lexus Restore things." His words rolled out like a memorized speech, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. I shook my head and answered quietly. "She doesn't need things. She needs lessons. And this time, I won't buy her way out of them." He swallowed hard, then muttered that I was heartless before walking away. Later that week, Rosa called my phone directly for the first time. Her tone was sharp but controlled, as though she believed she could shame me into submission. "You're destroying a girl's chance at success," she told me. "Sophia deserves more than public school and humiliation." I listened without interrupting, then replied evenly, "She deserves integrity. And if she learns that here, instead of in ivory towers, so be it." Rosa sputtered, calling me cruel again, but I ended the call. It was becoming clear that neither she nor Victor understood the difference between discipline and neglect, between control and consistency. Sophia noticed the tension too. One night, she lingered at the doorway to my room, her voice hesitant. "Mom, why does Grandma Rosa hate you so much?" I set aside the laundry I was folding and looked at her. "Because I told the truth she didn't want to hear." Sophia frowned, curling her arms around herself. "She made me feel small the last time I was at Dad's, like I was just a piece in their game." Her voice trembled on the edges, and I crossed the room, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Then stop letting yourself be a piece. Choose where you stand." She nodded, eyes shining, and whispered, "I choose here." At school, Sophia began to change in ways I hadn't expected. She joined Maya at the cafe after shifts, helping out even when she wasn't scheduled. I saw her coming home with tired eyes and ink smudges on her fingers, but instead of complaining, she seemed steadier. She even started saving part of her paycheck in a small envelope she tucked in her desk drawer. One evening, she handed me a $20 bill and said, "For groceries." I tried to give it back, but she insisted. That simple gesture, small as it was, told me she was beginning to grasp what it meant to contribute instead of consume. Victor, on the other hand, spiraled deeper. He showed up again on our porch this time, without Rosa or Camila, his face lined and weary. "Elena, I'm begging you. Sophia is miserable. She misses her friends. Can't you at least give her the car back?" I stood in the doorway, my arms crossed. "No, Victor. She'll earn her own. When she proves herself, she'll drive again." He grew agitated, his voice rising. "You're punishing her for my mistakes, for Camila's mistakes." I answered calmly, "No, Victor. She's living with her own words." "That's different." He left with a frustrated sigh, muttering that I was impossible. That night, Sophia approached me in the kitchen, her hands trembling slightly. "Dad came again, didn't he?" she asked. I nodded. She bit her lip, then whispered, "I don't want to stay there anymore. Not ever. It feels wrong." She didn't explain further, but her tone told me enough. I nodded slowly and said, "Then keep proving you belong here, Sophia, because words are cheap. Effort is not." Her shoulders sagged with relief, and she murmured, "I will." For once, I believed her. The months wore on, and the quiet strength between us grew. Sophia studied late into the night, kept up her job, and spoke less about the glamour she once craved. One evening, she brought up college again, her voice careful. "Mom, I don't need Columbia anymore. I think community college is right for me. Then maybe transfer later? It feels smarter." I studied her face, searching for the flippant defiance I'd seen before, but found only sincerity. "Then that's what you'll do," I said softly. "But the savings I've built will only go to someone who respects it. Do you understand?" She nodded firmly. "I understand. I'll earn it." And for the first time, I felt she meant it not as a promise, but as a decision. The final straw came on a warm Saturday morning when Rosa Victor and a pale, exhausted Camila appeared once more at my door. They spoke of peace, of family unity, of forgiveness. Rosa delivered her practiced speech about tradition and togetherness, her voice hard as glass. Camilla's words were hoarse, stripped of their former glamour, pleading for Sophia's sake. But before I could answer, Sophia stepped forward from behind me, her chin high and her voice steady. "I don't need you anymore. I have my mother." Her words cut through the air, sharper than anything I could have said. I closed the door on them. Then the sound, final and solid, like the closing of a chapter. That evening, as we ate the scrambled eggs Sophia had cooked, still too salty, but made with effort, she glanced at me shyly. "Are we good?" she asked. I took a breath and answered, "We're getting there, step by step." Her smile was small, but it was real. Later that night, I sat at the table alone, looking at the statement from her college fund. The number glowed steady and untouched, every dollar a reminder of sacrifice. I closed the laptop and whispered to myself, "Not yet." Forgiveness was on the horizon, but trust still needed to be rebuilt. And though our home was calmer, I knew the storm outside had not truly passed. Victor and Rosa weren't done, not by a long stretch. I could feel it like thunder in the distance, waiting for its chance to roll closer. The weeks after I closed the door on Rosa Victor and Camila brought a strange quiet. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was reacting to their chaos, but instead holding firm ground of my own. Sophia and I settled into something steady, though fragile. She worked her cafe shifts, studied at night, and tried in small ways to show she was changing. I gave her space, but kept my eyes open. Trust wasn't rebuilt overnight, and I wasn't going to forget how easily it had been shattered. But silence has a way of fooling you. I knew in my bones that Victor wasn't done, that Rosa wasn't either. They had lived too long on appearances, and I had ripped that away from them. The knock came on a Tuesday evening while I was preparing dinner. When I opened the door, Rosa stood there again, dressed in her Sunday best, as though she were walking into a courtroom. Victor was beside her, his expression tight, and Camila trailed behind them, looking worn down, her once glamorous face shadowed with exhaustion. "Enough is enough," Rosa announced as they stepped into the living room uninvited. Her voice carried the sharpness of a practiced speech. "You've punished Sophia long enough. She belongs at Westfield, not at that place. You are tearing apart our family." I didn't bother asking them to sit. "You mean the family you all ignored until it suited you," I replied. "The family you walked away from when it was inconvenient." Victor's voice cut in, strained but firm. "Elena, think about her senior year. You can't strip that away. You're taking away her future. Sophia appeared in the hallway, frozen in place as she listened. I looked back at Victor. No, Victor. I didn't strip away anything. She did when she decided I wasn't her mother. I'm simply honoring her choice. Camilla's face twisted and her voice broke through with sudden desperation. You're jealous because she respects me more. That's why you're doing this. I felt a laugh rise sharp in my throat. Respect? Is that what you call it when a teenager repeats whatever you tell her? Respect doesn't pay tuition, Camila. Respect doesn't buy cars. Respect doesn't build a future. The silence was heavy. Rosa's face burned red. Victor's jaw clenched, and Camila shifted uncomfortably. I let the moment hang before saying quietly, if you believe you're the better parents, then show it. Pay the tuition. Put your names on her car. Fund her future. Until then, don't come into my house telling me how to sacrifice. Their eyes darted among each other, but no one spoke. I finally pointed to the door. Get out. They left their retreat sharper than their entrance, but I knew this wasn't the end. That night, Sophia lingered by my bedroom door. Her voice was soft, almost afraid. Mom, I don't want to go back there anymore. Not ever. I looked up from the laundry basket, studying her trembling hands. Then, prove it, I said evenly. Prove with your actions that you mean it. Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. For once, she didn't argue. The following week, the storm reached its breaking point. I came home from work to find Sophia sitting at the table, her phone face down beside her, her cheeks streaked with tears. She looked up quickly. Dad's been calling nonstop. Camila, too. They want me to post something to clean up her image. They said it would help everyone. Her voice cracked as she added, I told them no. Relief washed through me, but I didn't show it. Instead, I sat across from her. Good. That's your answer. And now you live with it. She nodded slowly, her shoulders sagging as though a weight had shifted. By Thursday, the phone calls turned to theatrics. Victor showed up outside my workplace again, shouting until security removed him. Later that evening, Camila posted a long rant online accusing me of poisoning Sophia against her. The comments filled quickly, but the responses weren't what she expected. People mocked her, pointed to her arrest, reminded her that motherhood couldn't be bought with hashtags. Her glossy image crumbled in real time, and she couldn't stop it. That weekend, Sophia broke down completely. She came into my room with a letter she had written, her hands shaking as she held it out. Read it, she whispered. I unfolded the paper and saw the confession written in her uneven script. She admitted how she had believed Victor and Camila's lies because she wanted to, how she had dismissed me because it was easier to chase their shiny promises. She ended with a plea. I just want you to be my mom again. My real mom. I folded the letter carefully, set it aside, and looked at her. You are my daughter. That has never changed. But trust is not automatic. You will earn it back, piece by piece. She nodded through her tears, whispering, I will. For the first time in months, I believed she was ready to try. Still, I knew Victor and Rosa weren't done. Their world was collapsing, and people like them rarely go quietly. As I sat alone that night with a cup of tea, the house quiet around me, I felt the tension rising again. The calm we had built was only a pause, not an ending. Somewhere out there, plans were being made, and I would need to be ready when they came crashing back into our lives. The quiet I had been holding on to shattered one Friday morning when a thick envelope arrived by certified mail. The return address was a law office I didn't recognize. Inside were neatly typed pages Victor and Rosa had filed for emergency guardianship of Sophia, claiming I was emotionally unfit and financially reckless. Their petition painted me as a bitter woman, bent on revenge, accusing me of abandoning my daughter's education and sabotaging her future out of jealousy toward Camila. I sat at the kitchen table with those pages spread in front of me, my hands steady even as my chest tightened. They were trying to take from me the very child I had carried through every storm. When Sophia came home from her shift at the cafe, she found me with the papers. Her face went pale as she read over my shoulder. "They can't do this," she whispered. I looked at her firm and even. "They already tried. Now we'll answer." She dropped her apron on the chair, shaking her head in disbelief. "Mom, I'll testify. I'll tell them everything." For the first time, I saw not just guilt, but fire in her eyes. That evening, I called Keith, my lawyer friend, and asked him to come by. He spread the petition across the dining table, skimming with a practiced eye. "This is weak," he said finally. "They're grasping at straws, but it will cause noise. We'll respond." His confidence steadied me. Sophia hovered in the doorway, listening. "Will I have to go to court?" she asked softly. Keith gave her a reassuring nod. "Only if it gets that far, but your voice matters more than theirs." She exhaled relief, mingling with dread, and I knew she understood the seriousness of what we faced. The following week brought whispers through our small community. Rosa had told anyone who would listen that I was abusive, that I had turned Sophia into a servant in my own home. Camila, out on bail, fueled the rumors online, spinning stories about a toxic mother destroying a child's future. At Jefferson High, students gossiped, repeating half-truths until they reached Sophia's ears. One afternoon, she came home with her eyes red from holding back tears. "They said you starve me," she muttered bitterly, slamming her backpack down. I took her face gently in my hands and said, "Look at this table, Sophia. Does it look like starvation? Let their lies speak for themselves. We know the truth." She nodded, but her anger at them simmered hotter than mine. The court hearing was scheduled within 3 weeks. Those days stretched long and heavy. Victor tried calling again, this time with pleading messages about family unity. Rosa left voicemails filled with scripture and condemnation. I saved them all. Sophia focused on school and work, and in the evenings she sat with me, her notes open, asking me to quiz her for upcoming tests. It was a quiet rebellion, choosing diligence over drama. Every night, I reminded myself that my strongest answer to their lies was the proof of the life we were actually living. The morning of the hearing, Sophia wore her cafe uniform under a neat sweater, her hair pulled back simply. "I want them to see me as I am," she said as we walked into the courthouse. The waiting area buzzed with hushed voices. Rosa sat stiff-backed with Victor beside her, both whispering urgently to a lawyer who looked increasingly uncomfortable. Camila entered, late sunglasses, hiding her face, her posture far less confident than months before. When she caught sight of Sophia, her expression flickered with something close to regret, but my daughter turned away without hesitation. Inside the courtroom, the judge listened as their lawyer spoke first, reciting accusations that painted me as controlling and neglectful. I sat still, hands folded in my lap, letting their words fall into the air without defense. When it was our turn, Keith rose and spoke plainly. He presented Sophia's letter, her grades, her pay stubs from the cafe, and the college savings account that remained untouched. Then he called Sophia to the stand. My daughter's voice was steady as she spoke. She explained how Victor had abandoned her, how Camila had filled her head with promises she couldn't keep, how Rosa had pressured her to believe lies. She admitted her own mistakes, her cruel words to me, her regret. She ended with a quiet truth. She is my mother. No one else. The silence that followed was heavier than any shouting. The judge leaned forward, hands clasped. "This petition is dismissed," he said firmly. "And I will warn you, Mr. Marquez, Mrs. Alvarez, further harassment of this woman or her daughter will not be tolerated. His gavel struck final and unyielding. Outside the courthouse, Rosa stormed ahead without looking back, her muttered curses trailing in the air. Camila kept her sunglasses on, avoiding eye contact, her once bright image dimmed to nothing. Victor lingered for a moment, his face drawn with defeat. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but Sophia stepped forward first. "Don't," she said, flatly. Her voice carried the weight of everything they had tried to steal. He turned and walked away. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Sophia and I sat together on the porch steps. The air was cool, the world strangely calm. She leaned against me lightly, not like the defiant girl who once told me I wasn't her mother, but like a daughter finding her place again. "It's over, isn't it?" she asked softly. I placed my arm around her shoulders, holding her close. "Almost," I said. "But justice has a way of echoing, and theirs is still coming." Inside the house was quiet, but I felt something shift deep within me. Their lies had collapsed in a courtroom, their arrogance exposed. Sophia had stood tall where once she would have crumbled. For the first time, I knew the storm was turning fully in our favor. Yet part of me sensed the final blow had not yet fallen. Something told me Rosa, Victor, and Camila had not felt the full weight of consequence, and when it came, it would leave no illusions standing. The courthouse victory didn't erase the months of heartache, but it drew a line that no one could cross again. For the first time, I felt the ground beneath me was steady, not shifting under the weight of lies or accusations. Sophia's words in front of the judge had carried more strength than I imagined she had, and in that moment, she chose me openly without hesitation. That choice mattered more than any ruling on paper. In the weeks that followed, Rosa retreated into her own bitterness, avoiding eye contact in the grocery store where we used to pass by chance. Victor grew quieter, his presence shrinking in Sophia's life until the phone calls slowed, then stopped. Camila faced her own reckoning court dates, headlines the unraveling of a life she had built on smoke and mirrors. Their voices faded like the background hum of a machine finally switched off. What remained was my home, my daughter, and the slow process of stitching back together what had been torn. Sophia began to settle into Jefferson High in ways that surprised me. She studied with Maya, laughing softly at the kitchen table as they worked through calculus problems. She kept her cafe job, saving her earnings in a jar she proudly counted every Friday night. One evening, she told me she no longer dreamed of being an influencer. "I just want a life that feels real," she said quietly, and the simplicity of her words brought tears I didn't let her see. Our relationship was not instantly mended, but step by step, we moved closer. She asked more questions about my work, about how I had managed all those years alone. She began helping with household chores without complaint, sometimes humming as she folded laundry, a sound that felt like home returning. Trust was not handed back. It was built with each small action, each honest word. And with time, I found myself softening again, not out of weakness, but out of strength. One Saturday morning, as we shared scrambled eggs she had cooked without burning, Sophia looked across the table and asked, "Do you think I'll ever deserve the college fund again?" I set down my fork and met her eyes. "It isn't about deserving, Sophia. It's about respecting what was sacrificed for it. When you live with that respect, the fund is yours." She nodded, her expression solemn, as if she finally understood the weight behind the dollars stacked in those statements. Justice hadn't come through dramatic vengeance. It had come through holding my line, through refusing to bend when bending would have been easier in the moment. Their world collapsed under the weight of their own choices, and I didn't have to lift a hand. My revenge was simply letting them be exposed while I chose consistency and truth. In the end, that was stronger than any performance they tried to stage. Looking back now, I see the lesson clearly. Love without respect drains you dry. Sacrifice without boundaries becomes a chain you fasten around your own ankles. It took nearly losing my daughter to learn that sometimes the hardest act of love is stepping back and letting consequences teach what words cannot. Justice is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, steady, and unmistakable, like a door closing, a gavel striking, or a mother finally saying enough. Sophia is still growing, and so am I. Our home carries scars from what we endured, but it also carries the strength of survival. I don't regret the boundaries I drew. They gave both of us a chance to see the truth. And in that truth, I found dignity restored, not just for me, but for the daughter who now walks beside me with clearer eyes. Before we close, I'd love to know what part of this journey spoke to you most. Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you'd like to hear more true family stories, stay connected here.